think people need to kind of have an overview. I don't think that, well, the reason I started Let's Kick Ass, I'll start with that. The reason I started Let's Kick Ass was ASS stands for AIDS Survivor Syndrome. That's what I call what happens after the AIDS tsunami recedes. It's when, we've all sort of taken a deep breath and looked around and we say, oh my God, I'm alive. What the fuck? What am I going to do now? So there's a lot of people who have PTS, post-traumatic stress. Depression is a very common symptom that I hear. Anxiety, flashes of anger, insecurity, there's a whole lot of things that are related to survivor syndrome, which I just found out about after I sort of coined this idea. I had never heard of it before that, and I started looking into it. And so I thought we need something to be able to talk about that experience of surviving. Because I've been HIV positive for 30 years this year. So, I don't know much about anything, but I know about surviving. I know what it means to have been through those times.
I think when this community of shared experience like this gathers, that it's a little bit sensitive to just jump to positive, that it almost feels like there has to be some kind of statement or welcome. We're not having this opportunity to come forward, to come together and to say, how do we do this re-jump starting our lives, or how do we do this moving forward? I think it's work that many of us are doing on our own or trying to make happen for ourselves. Like, fuck, how do I kickstart? That's definitely something that's been my kind of thing.
Yeah.
If nothing else in this evening, if we can make sure that people come out of this feeling they're not the only one, that's a huge achievement. We asked people who else has been sort of feeling these things, and the whole room raised their hand.
Yeah.
And suddenly you could tell that for everybody that half of the psychic pain just dissipated immediately because everybody realized they weren't the only one.
That mic does not work. You did not know that just now. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Wow, this is a full house. This is so awesome. Thank you. My name is Tez Anderson, and is this too loud? And I started this thing called Let's Kick Ass. And the acid question is AIDS survivor syndrome. And it's what I came up with to describe what happens after the AIDS tsunami recedes. It's what we've all been living with these past few years. It struck me that there's a lot of suicides and a lot of people in despair, not from HIV so much, but from having survived and lived through all those decades of death and dying. And we all know what that is because it's all our story. So there was nothing going on in San Francisco around this topic. There was starting to be a national dialogue, and then Spencer Cox died. If you know who he was an activist in New York. And he died in December. And his death really affected me because he was a man who had gotten the HIV meds, protease, Norvir, into the testing system, so it became something we all took. He was the one that did develop the protocol. And so what I found out was after Spencer died was that he had stopped taking his meds. And that just baffled me. It just flummoxed me that this man who had worked so hard to get these drugs approved and to save so many lives, mine and most of yours, if you take HIV meds, couldn't save his own life. And I found out that he had a crystal meth problem, but I don't think that was the issue so much as it was just that he lost hope. And it was around that same time that I realized there was a lot of suicide. People were killing themselves. And I started asking myself what it was. Because in my own life, this mirrored something that was going on with me. I'm 54 years old. I tested HIV positive in '86. I seroconverted 30 years ago this year. And, like all of us, I was told that I was going to be dead in 2 years. And I kept living. And then after about 25 years of that, of up and down health stuff and all that, I realized that I was coming apart. I had prepared to die. I had buried a lover. I had been with him when he died. I was okay with dying. I had made plans to die. I had not made plans to retire. That was the last fucking thing on my mind. So I had a real kind of life crisis. I just came apart. I say that it was like the pendulum of life and death and illness turned into a big wrecking ball. And I managed to take the wrecking ball and wreck what was left of the relationships that I had. I was ostracized by all of them and alone. So I went in and I hid out. I became agoraphobic almost. I just hid for a while. And then I just started talking to people and slowly coming back into it. I started meeting with 3 or 4 friends every week. We'd have lunches and talk about this issue. And they'd gone through similar things. And I thought, this is something. And there's not a name for it. So, hence, I created this ASK idea. So that's why we're here tonight. Tonight we're talking about trying to look ahead. Come on in, guys. Move forward and start thinking about these next 20 years, because this is our shot. This is our last shot. Those other years we got free pass. The next 20, 30 is going to be it. And we got to make the very best of them. And I know we can do it. I see a lot of beautiful, bright faces in this room. And I know that if we put our heads together and come up with this, we can do it. I also know that there's no ASOs in San Francisco that are doing this. We were not on their radar until this event. And I think we are now, which is going to be interesting. But we want to leave here tonight with the next tasks, or things for us to do from here forward. So now we'll introduce Greg Casson, who's somewhere around here. He's my co-moderator tonight. We're going to introduce you to these fine gentlemen here momentarily. And hi, Greg.
Hi, everybody. So I want to introduce Tez, but before, or at some point in the middle of introducing Tez, I want to introduce one another. I want everyone to take a look around. Because somebody said, oh my God, these are like the people that used to walk past the Cafe Flora 20 fucking years ago. So I want us to look around, and if you go through, if I have one more person that tells me oh, I almost didn't recognize you. Thank you. Thank you. All that work I had done, a waste. So I just want to take a moment to look around this room. So look around and see all these photos. There's so many of us. Look around.
And how many have you had sex with?
That would be your private panel. So before we start, I'd like to just take a moment to just acknowledge that everybody here has a shared experience. That everybody here, it takes a lot to leave the couch and to not watch the Kardashians. So and in all seriousness.
Are they on tonight?
I think they're always on. That we just take this moment to acknowledge with one, actually, along the lines of our friend Ed Wolf, let's take a moment and join hands with one another. Oh, shut up. Remove him. All 20 of them. So go ahead. Just join hands. You know what? The biggest complainers love it the most. Just the way it is. Oh, no. They love it. And we take a moment and we remember everyone that is not here. And we are. Everyone that's not here. Everyone that we feel like we could be seeing that would be here if they had made it. They made it past 95. They made it past the next wave and then the crystal meth wave. And here we are. Let's take a moment from this place, take a nice deep breath. Pretend you're like you're raised in Berkeley. That's right. Now stand up and okay, so before we do that, I just want to say the whole goal here tonight is remembering we are not alone. There are no strangers here tonight. There are no. How many people came here completely by themselves tonight? Raise your hand. All right. How many people came here tonight? How many people came here tonight? And there was someone who shared this with me. They came here tonight, and it was a stretch to get out of the house because of how much they have been isolated. And let's hear it. And let's be That's how we take care of one another. So when Tez started talking about this, it felt like, at first I thought I was coming to participate in an event. And as he and Matt started talking, and then we started meeting with this community of folks that were going to be on the panel, I felt like that we were really not planning an event, but we were reigniting a movement. That there has been some deep suffering in our community that has not been addressed. And that we have this opportunity to re-engage, to go with what we know works, what worked 15 and 20 years ago, that engaging with one another, reaching out to one another, taking care of one another. So tonight is not a night. So this one friend of mine said, I'm not coming to this, don't raise your hand, I know who you are. I'm not coming to this because I've heard all the sad stories before and it's the same old shit and nothing of it changes. And I just want to say, this is not a presentation tonight. This will be, I'm going to see everybody's eyes before we finish it. Let's see everyone. That this is an invitation tonight to in some way, that we have to create a movement where we reach out and take care of one another again. I see some people are like, they took those active listening classes, they're nodding their heads, okay? So I want to start with, let's say hello to some of the folks that are here and have them say something about what their idea or their goal is or their wish is for this evening. So, oh wait a second, no, not yet. I told everyone you're gonna stand up and welcome one another. So stand up and give a whole bunch of hugs and say hello to one another.
Big photo, huh? Video.
Go over to somebody else across the room and go say hello. Go ahead, say hello to somebody else. Alive.
need to go get my quota. Hi, New York. Hi, New York.
How are you? Hi, good. Manuel. Manuel, nice to meet you.
Okay, go ahead and sit down. Okay, so really fast. There's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of folks from different projects, from film projects, from different organizations and stuff like that. And I want to let you guys just say hi and say, and say your name and let everyone say hi to you. So, number one, we'll practice. Hi, my name's Greg. Hi, Greg. Okay, you're not in recovery. Denial. So, Billy from AIDS Legal Referral Panel. Stand up, Billy. Everyone say hi to Billy. Bonnie Parker from the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. He started the LIFE program at and now he's doing a project for HIV in over 50, men over 50. 50 plus network. 50 plus network. Everyone say hi, Jeff. God bless you. Okay. Please, stand and say your name. Shout it out.
Marshall Feldman with the Alliance Health Project. I facilitate a support group for gay men over 50.
Super. Hi, Marvin. Marshall. It was my therapist when couples counseling a few years ago. We broke up.
Hi, my name is Manuel. I'm with the Stop AIDS Project and Positive Force. We have some of our materials over there, just here in support, and really gratifying to be here.
Good. Everyone went to Catholic school. Okay, just stand up and tell them what you're doing. This is Aaron. Say hi, Aaron. Hi, Aaron.
I'm actually a New York Life LGBT agent out as being HIV positive, and I launched the very first HIV positive financial practice in America with the full backing of New York Life last week.
Everybody say hi, Dan.
My name's Daniel Padone, and I'm doing a documentary about men living with HIV and AIDS for over 50 years old in Palm Springs specifically. It's a great migration down to the desert.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lee. I'm a co-chair of the HIV Health Services Planning Council, and we produced the first white paper on HIV and aging about 4 years ago.
Say hi, Lee.
Good evening, warriors, because we are the warriors of this battle. My name is Gabriel Ortega, and I am with the HIV Planning Council. Believe me, I'm rooting for you guys.
Hi, Gabriel. You felt him, huh? You felt him. Okay, you two stand there. And be ready. We want a soundbite.
Alright, hi, my name's Jessica Whitbread. I'm currently the global chair for the International Community of Women Living with HIV. And I'm the youngest ever and the first queer woman, which is exciting. Anyway, so I'm here from Toronto, and I'm in a film called Positive Women Exposing Injustice, and it's screening tomorrow with the film HIV is Not a Crime. And we hope you all can come.
Is that the Roxy tomorrow night at 7 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm planning to come. I invite everybody here to come. It should be a
The Roxy tomorrow night.
There's a reception and Q&A and 2 films. Sounds great.
And my name is Robert Stoll.
Robert.
I am featured in HIV is Not a Crime. It's a short film produced through
the Siever Project, which is a national organization that addresses the issue, HIV-related issue of HIV criminalization, stigma, and discrimination here in the U.S.
So Robert's a movie star. Everybody say hi. Anybody else up here? Please.
Hi everybody, Matt Sharp.
Say hi, Matt.
I just wanted to announce October 1st, there's a town hall forum on updates on the cure research, HIV cure research. Everybody heard of that, right? What's going on? It's gonna happen? No, but it's at the State Building. It's free. It starts at 6 o'clock.
When? What day? October 1st. State Building, 7 o'clock.
And real quickly, I'll tell you that we have we got one more? Go for it.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Gold.
Hi, Jonathan.
I'm with the Laughing Stock Free Improv Program. If you're interested in having some laughs, taking classes on Saturday afternoon, see me afterwards. I'm also one of the hosts on the annual Pause Cruise, which is going out of Miami in November. If you're interested in that, please see me as well.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
Maybe now it's time to be our illustrious panel who we met 2 times in 2 weeks to plan this event, and they're terrific people, and I really want you to meet them all. So we're just going to start down there at the end with Michael Siever. And they're just going to tell you a little bit about themselves and the names and what they're here for.
Hi, hi, I'm Michael Siever. I am, what am I saying? What I hope to get out of tonight?
Whatever you want us to hear, honey.
Thank you. I'm hoping that we can talk about how we can all find whatever that spark in life is that keeps us going, because we're all still here. And, that's a wonderful thing. But in the process, I think a lot of us sometimes have lost that spark at times and have gotten kind of lost and lost in lots of different ways that we'll probably get into at various points tonight. But, I feel like I've been living with HIV for 22 years, and it's only been in the last 5 years that I really reawakened and realized that I love living and I love life and I love a lot of other things. But, my hope is that everyone can kind of be in that kind of a place, because that's what it's all about.
The other thing, if you guys wouldn't mind just telling me what you want to get out of this evening, what your goals are, if you think about it. Because a lot of this tonight is about setting a new agenda, starting a new chapter in this, age journey that we're all on. It starts tonight, really. And this is one of the reasons we did this, is to get people here to find out what your needs are. So I want to find out from the panelists what the goals are for tonight. If you have some ideas about that.
Well, like I said, that we figure out ways to help people find their path in life that works for them and that enables them to enjoy the next 20, 30 years.
Right.
Hi everyone, I'm Ramon Martinez. I am here to build community, and I think that Tez and Greg both got us started off really well, and to get in the spirit of community building. I have been HIV positive for 21 years. When I was diagnosed, my doctor told me to essentially to live my life and expect to live 4 to 6 years. And I did that. I got involved with a really great organization, and there's some people here that are familiar with it, called Bay Positives. So it was one of the first organization in the United States run by and for HIV positive youth. And it saved my life, but I think that the clock had started ticking, and that 4 to 6 years, although it was unconscious, was there, and it was running down. And by the time it had run its course, I started using drugs, I started sort of acting out, doing things that really weren't in my nature, generally speaking, because I thought it was my time to go. And it wasn't. Thank goodness, right? It wasn't. So after sort of figuring out that that wasn't working for me and getting a lot of support in this community in San Francisco, things turned around for me. I started to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had to sort of plant my feet, sort of pick a direction and just sort of keep moving. And one of the things that I did about 7 years ago, I went back to school, to graduate school. And I just graduated a year ago, 2012, with my doctorate in clinical psychology. Thank you. And so one of the things that I figured out that helped me stay engaged and stay connected and was being of service to others. And that really works for me. And so I'm hoping that this organization, this group, you all here tonight, that there's some way that I can sort of plug in and be connected to you all and to build on this evening. I know this is not meant to be the last of this type of event. I'm expecting that there are going to be others. I also recognize that you have 5 men on this panel. There are no women represented here.
I was told that there is at least one woman out there with HIV. Hi. Hi. We will ask you to stand up momentarily and tell your story.
There's more than one.
Yeah. Cool. We're happy you're here. We just couldn't find you to this panel, but you're part of our story, so we want to hear it.
Positive for over 23 years.
What's your name?
Jennifer McGough.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Hi, Jennifer.
Congratulations.
What's that?
So you look great. We're glad you're here.
Thanks. I'm about 60 pounds heavier than I think some of my people that I haven't seen in a long time. So the recognition, people didn't recognize me at first. That's a little hard, but that's okay. I'm still here.
No one recognizes anybody anymore. We're all gray and wrinkled and old. It's fabulous.
So I'm done. I just want to say you guys look fucking beautiful to me.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you. My name is Bartholomew Cassidy.
Hi, Marc.
Hi. He was a baby when I was at PW San Francisco when we started very positive. So I've done a number of years. Great. As I said, my name is Bartholomew Cassidy. Let's see, I kind of feel like this is my coming out party. Because, let's see, I've used 1948, I've used 1960 as my birthday. And finally, I think I've come to the realization that I was born in 1940. It's been a sort of a silent internal intimate process of dealing with my age and dealing with living with HIV. And I think that I came here tonight to join the collective voices of those who care more about living than waiting to die. Just give you a brief story. It was in Memorial, 1983, Memorial Weekend, when I was rushed to the hospital. And some of you, if you're familiar, will know this place that I was rushed from. The slot. Oh. There's the voices I was overdrug dosed, in a coma, and I was diagnosed at May weekend at Hampton. And still today, I will never forget the experience of all of my lymph nodes swollen, within my neck, under my arms, and within my wounds. And I was living up in Russian River at the time. And so I was rushed to the hospital, and I was in a coma for 3 days. And as I came out of this drug-induced coma, the doctors were standing around my table, around my bed, and they said, well, you know, you couldn't have that. And I thought, what is it I couldn't have? And the other guy said, why not? And the other doctor said, why not? He said, well, only gay white men get grid. And I didn't even know what grid was at that time. This was 1983. So I was a nurse at the time when they left. Right? checked out all IVs and everything, went back to the river and waited to die for 6 months. That was my sentence. But that's why I say the voice here today is that I'm standing on the shoulder of a lot of incredible men that I've worked with in the past, such as Randy Moore, Reggie Williams, John Tinger, Phil Tingley, all these men that I live with their voices today. And I bring their voices here to you because they didn't live to see this happen. And I wish they were still here. So Greg mentioned that we need to start a movement. I'm not in favor of movements because I think movements have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. I would like to suggest that we think in terms of starting, let's say, Institute on Aging for engagement and stabilization. And that's my
Hello? And I'll close out to BJ. My name is Will Bamer, and a lot of beautiful familiar faces and beautiful unfamiliar faces out here. It's a huge crowd. We're very blessed to have all of you folks here, men, women, old, medium-aged. Yeah? When Tez and I were in a group at Stop AIDS in spring, which we dubbed as Still Kicking, and I think kicking ass kind of came out of that same sense that, by God, we are still kicking. And the idea for me has been one kind of along the lines of the past 15 years, actually, that I had thought, as most of us did in the 90s, that there's no way that I was going to make it to 2000. And now it's 2013. Quite amazing. I was tested in April of 1989. Figured I was probably positive, but I also had AIDS as a result of not actually testing earlier than I should have. So probably I've been positive about 30 years. Through the course of the time I kept working, figuring, okay, just one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, etc. And now it's been 1 year at a time, and guess what? I'm retired, folks. Yay! My idea for tonight and for ongoing is that we do have a chance to re-engender a connection that a lot of us have had over the course of time through things such as Positive Force, such as Bay Positives, such as Thrive, which is a group that I helped moderate for a long time. Through the course of time, unfortunately, people have died. We are still losing our friends to AIDS, or to aging as a result of HIV and AIDS. And that is something that is becoming more and more evident and hopefully understood nationally, that HIV is not a death sentence, AIDS is not a death sentence, but none of us get out of this alive, but we sure can have a good time and hopefully continue to go along as we can, even in spite of it all. And that was part of our motto as Thrive, was that we may not be thriving, but we're striving to thrive in spite of it all. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad to see some really wonderful faces in the crowd. Carol and I, Marc, Jeff, David.
Oh, wow,
Jonathan.
Jonathan Van Nuys is standing over there.
Where is he?
Hi,
There he is.
Jonathan, I know, we have this.
He was our moderator.
He was our facilitator for the long-term support group that was a 12-week thing at Stop AIDS. That's where Will and I met. And everyone had projects they had to do, wanted to do. It was our task. My project was to come up with this website. So that's kind of the origins of it. So Jonathan, thank you.
I'm in.
My name is Ed Wolf. Hi, hello. I moved to San Francisco in 1976. I became a Shanti volunteer in 1983. And I've stayed involved in working and helping and speaking and writing in the academic since that time. I'm HIV negative, and I call in all the caregivers and lovers and helpers and all of us who don't live with the virus but are indeed AIDS survivors. I'll be 65 years old in February, and I just want to keep just emphasizing that I'm growing older. I worked on 5A, some of you know, for many years, and you know, the great tragedy of the AIDS epidemic is that so many young people died. And I know, and I have been with many of them, who felt the great unfairness is that they were not able to live, to grow old. And so I have taken it upon myself to be involved in anything like this that acknowledges the gift that we have, which is that we get to keep on living. I called a friend of mine that I met on the AIDS unit in 1986. I want you to call his name out. His name is Jim Kirker. He was a chaplain on Ward 5A. He's 94 years old. He lives in a 3-story walk-up in Berkeley. He gardens, he reads. He's just so inspiring to me. I said, Jim, what do I tell all of these men and women I'm going to see tonight? Like, how do you do it? How do you live to be 94? And he said that the secret is to keep breathing. And you know, the thing that he qualified is this. He said that he's come to realize that other than blinking your eyes, the thing we do most in our lives is we breathe. And how important it is, as often as you can, to breathe deeply, to taking deep breaths, because it gets you out of here and it brings you into here. So I want to spread information like that, like breathe deeply, and to find out what other things that we know as a community that's growing older, to figure out how to really celebrate this gift that we've been given, which is that we get to keep on living when so many other people, that's what they wanted. So that's why I'm here tonight.
I have a question. So you've had some time to figure it out. How many of you in here were born in 1940? How old are we? 73. How old are we?
78.
73?
74.
Thank you. That's the collective voices I need to hear.
Well, a side note, which is really
I still have to say my age,
You can figure it out. I told you earlier. He told us last night, it was very moving. Today is National HIV Aging and Awareness Day. You know that? The funny thing is, when we planned this event, I did not know that either. I found that out 2 weeks ago. And I thought, wow, what a cool bit of synchronicity that is. So there's lots of cool stuff going on around this thing. One of the things that Matt Sharp brought up the other night in our meeting was the Denver principles. And I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but there's 4 or 5 of these. Do you mind if I read those, Matt? I think it's a good idea. The Denver principles were done in 1983 and they're relevant to us today. Here they are, some of them. To live as fully and satisfying sexual and emotional lives as anyone else. Support us in our struggles against those who would fire us from our jobs, evict us from our homes, refuse to touch us or separate us from our loved ones, or community or our peers. Form caucuses to choose our own representatives to deal with the media, to choose our own agenda and plan our own strategies. Yes, you may.
Matt, would you do me a favor and just stand up and just frame what the Denver principles were, when it was started, and why it was? Just because that was a big part of our meeting that we had the other night.
Yeah, sure.
And it just, like, I had heard the term forever, and so, and it seems like it's very appropriate right now for the current state of our organizations and what we want from our organizations.
Especially before we get to the next game, yeah.
Sure. So I do HIV trainings all over the country, and I think one of the most valuable things I can do is talk about the history of HIV as people are and a lot of the people I talk to are HIV negative, they're service providers, or maybe they're newly diagnosed, and they just don't have a clue about the history, and it just really frustrates me because I was there from the beginning, I was really in the second wave. But the power that existed back then was just so amazing, as many of you know who were there. One of the things that was created was an early conference of people living with HIV in Denver in 1983. And a group of people were at that conference that mean a lot to me that are no longer here, like Hank Wilson was there, this one person. They came together and they created a document of principles, a set of principles that actually still exist today. And a lot of national organizations are starting to promote these principles once again because they're actually still very relevant today. And I think they can help motivate us and help move us into the next 20 or 30 years of our lives. Is that good?
And that's a good preface to the next 2, which I think are probably the most important ones to us right now. Be involved at every level of decision making and specifically serve on the board of directors of providers' organizations. To be included in all AIDS forums with equal credibility as participants, to share our own experience and our own knowledge. And the last one is to live and die with dignity. And yeah, there's a lot of lists on our website, letskickass.org. But those 2 there, especially about the decision-making thing, that's in our hands. There ain't nobody else going to do this for us. That's why we're getting together tonight to start that happening. So this is about you guys. We want to hear from you. So Greg, what do you think we should do next?
Let guys comment on that, because this is a really important part of
it is.
I was on the board of the National Association of People with AIDS for 9 years, and we wrote our mission based on Denver principles at that time early on. And I brought it to read it for you. It said, people living with HIV and AIDS relates to the concept that is predicated on the fact that we are at our best when we have autonomy over decisions affecting our lives, the capacity to control appropriate levels of responsibility in meeting our needs, ownership of our choices and the consequences thereof. These ideas, voiced by many, are particularly pertinent to our actions around the HIV epidemic. Empowerment is the concept of these facts and realities. It's been with me for quite some time. I live by that principle.
So I think your comment that is important.
Yes.
Is that long-term survivors are HIV positive and negative.
Yes.
And in the groups that I'm doing, there's been angry men showing up. And that as we're aging, while age is important, we have a higher rate, significantly higher rate of diabetes and heart disease and hypertension. And we are aging alone. The vast majority of us live alone with a cat. Or in San Francisco, we live with a dog, we go to the dog park, and we don't know the name of the guy at the other end of the leash, but we know that he is Fluffy's daddy. Okay? I think it's really important that in this conversation we keep both HIV positive and negative in the forefront, because the issues are absolutely the same, and we are aging and we're getting sick and our bodies are wearing out whether we've got the virus or not.
I completely agree with you, which is why we asked Ed here if he's HIV negative. I don't know if he said that or not, but he's our totally negative guy. And he's really good at it.
Okay, I want to add one thing about Matt's piece about the Denver principles. My understanding is that the conference was actually like an early conference about AIDS and medications and issues, and there were people with AIDS in the audience who wanted to see something from people with AIDS, and that it was being done by providers. So these 14 men retreated to a room in the hotel where the conference was being held, and they wrote these principles, and then here's the concept. The next day when the conference was going on, they disrupted it. And they came onto the stage and they went, stop all the talk about the viral replication. We wrote something in the hotel last night and we want to read it to you. And so there's a way in which this disruption of the way things are going is part of what I think we would like to call in. Because it's just so easy. I stopped going to the parade, and I stopped going to the candlelight march, and I stopped going to the Crossroads Street Fair, and I just kind of stopped. And it's so easy to just follow that pattern of getting older and tired, and so there's a disruption that I'm looking for to kind of revitalize what it means to have gone through that huge experience. I've been telling people, and I'm not to offend anyone in the room, but it becomes clear to me that it's not enough to just have survived AIDS. We can't coast on that. It's not going to be enough to live like the next third of our lives going, oh, I was there and I picketed and you don't know the people I buried and what I did. It's not enough. How do we get revitalized and find a way to do that?
I guess one of the questions is, how do we envision the next 20 years? I mean, are we living the lives we want to be living right now? And if we're not, how do we do that? Because really, it's in our hands to figure that out. You have a question? Hi.
Actually, a comment. My name's David.
Hi, David.
I've been positive since probably I've been positive probably sometime in the late 70s. The first person I knew that died was my boyfriend, who died in 1981 of KS in New York, and he was one of the early ones. And so the first time I tested was in 85, and I tested positive. What I want to just point out is that we do have some color on the panel. I'm grateful for that. But I think we do need some women to be involved in this planning process, and we also I think we also need some economic diversity, because we don't have much of that.
What do you mean specifically by economic diversity?
We don't have anybody who's homeless here. And there are people dying on the streets.
I just want you to know that I'm on disability, and I make a little less than $2,000 a month on disability, so I'm not a rich person.
Well, I make 700, so.
There's economic diversity, I think. I don't know there's homeless people here, but I understand what you're saying. I hear you. Yes.
Hi.
I'm not used to talking in public. I got really good news this week. The International Latino Group chose my artwork and my gay and HIV activism for something very special, and I don't feel very worthy of it. I had a very hard year. I came up with the idea for a blue rose for the cure for AIDS, and I also helped the first person that was thought to be cured, the first person cured of AIDS, to start a foundation. The people that took over his life decided to be very abusive, even physically attacking me, hacking my mail, and I'm afraid of them. One of them writes for the Washington Blade, and I lobby for some of the companies that they promote. I don't care if you believe me. They're made up a lot of lies about my being a bad person
Can I
and
just ask
crazy
you
and
a
all that.
question? Can I just ask you one thing? Because we want to keep this kind of focused on solutions.
Right. Well, my solution is that as a Latino, as an oddball artist, I'm presumed incompetent, and I've set trends in art. I have worked my ass off. I did the first homosexual, gay, safe-sex poster in Oaxaca, Mexico. I worked with a man named Bill Wolf that started the AIDS Emergency Foundation, that started one of the first gay Latino organizations to help people with AIDS in Oaxaca. So I'm just saying that please look into the World AIDS Institute and money connections there. I don't know anything about this, but I know that there's something sinister and that they treated me really wrong, and there must be a reason for that. And I'm brave enough to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Matt, I want to call Matt here, but he wants to say something. Come on, Matt.
I just want to say something that Greg and I were talking about a second there. You know, we're not on the agenda. Long-term survivors are not on the agenda. There's another agenda happening both nationally and both locally. And it frustrates me. How many of you are frustrated by that? Do you know what I'm talking about? No. We're not on the agenda as long-term survivors. The people that are on the agenda are people who are being who are newly diagnosed or not being tested. And that's great. We need to focus on that as well. But what I fear is that all of us who have survived and have lived through this are being forgotten and not getting the attention we deserve, the support we deserve, the care we deserve, the economic help we need, on and on and on. It's frustrating to me. I was just at the United States Conference on AIDS. It's like a circus now for the pharmaceutical industry. Yes. And, you know, I work with drug companies. I help consult some of them, but that's not the point. The point is that when you come back around to the national story and what's happening out there on the national stage, it's a circus about the drug companies. And I don't want to focus on that. What I want to say is that I think it's time for us to take the stage back. Take the attention back to us, because we're not getting that attention. And if we just sit back and let it happen, you know the mantra of AIDS-free generation. Does that insult any of you in the audience? As long-term survivors, I feel left out because I'm not a part of that AIDS-free generation because I have AIDS and I've had it for 30 years. So I'll get off
Every time I hear that AIDS-free generation, or I think after I'm dead, because as long as I'm alive, I know that they may find a cure for HIV, which would be amazing and wonderful, and I hope they do. but I also have neuropathy and all those things that AIDS affected. I also have a psychological impact of it, you know? One of the things that occurred to me the other day was that if we'd all been in the military, we have these symptoms we're having now, we would have a Veterans Administration, that's what they have. We don't have that. So question for the audience is, let's think about creating a Veterans Administration for us warriors. You see my tagline here is Healing Wounded AIDS Warriors. That's because I think every person in this room, whether you're negative or positive, you are an AIDS warrior. And it's going to be up to us to do what we did in the old days, come together and figure out how to take care of ourselves. Because no one's lives are going to do that for us. We can push them to it, we can tell them what we want them to do, but we're in this by ourselves. And that's okay, because we can do it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Please. I want them to be real brief, and I just want to recap, like, the whole point. Can I take 1 second? The whole point of this evening, which I don't mean to repeat to bore you, but the whole point of this evening is that the reason we read the Denver Principles is that it was so many years ago that those principles were up front. And the whole point, just like this, when this woman spoke out, and she's like, I'm here. Like, that's what it takes. It takes being at the fucking table. It takes being on the staff at the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, on HIV positive people, long-term survivors, on the staff at the Stop AIDS Project, at Life, at Shanti. It takes HIV positive, on the board of directors. I was just going to get to that. That's what it takes. That's what it takes to have your needs seen. Right now, the thrust is, it is all about protecting people from becoming HIV positive. Even our treatment is about protecting people from being HIV positive, because if we're treated, then we won't be passing the virus on so readily. So that's what it's all about. And I just want to say, the whole point for me of this evening is that we have to pretend like it's 1985 and people are dying all the fuck around us and nobody is doing anything. And you, only you, and your friend, and the next one, and the next one, is going to do something about it. By putting your heads together and by stepping out from the sofa, from the house, and joining an organization or joining a movement to actually take some action. There are people that are walking around, as Ed said in the film, as like ghosts. There are people that are walking around that we desperately need one another. Is that true?
Yeah.
We desperately need one another, which is why it's so powerful. I meant when I said in the front, it's so powerful that you're here. You are here with a shared experience. No one knows what that was like. Nobody knows what that was like. I remember being a kid, just finding out I was positive, and the movie Born on the 4th of July came up. And it was him coming home, although I hate him, that Scientologist. It was idiot. He's such an idiot. But that movie was so great, I think it was pre-Scientology, please God. And it was such a great movie because it was him coming home from the war, and nobody could understand him. And I watched it with my mom and dad. And they went to bed, and I remember shoving my face in the cushions of the sofa. That's what I was sleeping on. Sobbing because I thought, that's me. They have no idea what I'm going through. People, you have to respond. This is our mission. We have to respond. We have to come in and we have to demand. And I'm not calling anybody out, making anybody wrong. I'm not making any organization wrong. It all kind of evolved. And now it's for us to hold the integrity and to bring it back and to demand our seat at the table. parallel with actually doing the work that we need to do. So there was a few people that wanted to share, and you wanted to share, Lee, and Greg wanted to share in the back, and the guy next to him. So can we do those? And we do it really fast. You stand up, you all stand up, and you be ready to talk.
You said what I was going to do. Anyway, I think, you know, what concerns me now is that we need to reinforce the principles that were established for the HIV movement of these 80s and the 90s. We have to get off the couch and get involved politically. We just had the one of the pharmaceutical companies kick a gay person out of the from the jury.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to get back, reinforce the principles of what we stood for and what we fought for. So we need to be involved. We need to get active. We need to, be united as a voice of force, and have a political voice here in Sacramento, in Washington. So we need to really get together again, come alive, get out of the couch, get involved. I mean, I'm 61, and I'm 31 years with HIV, but I'm still going. I'm still active in the community.
I want to take a moment to ask everybody to think about these for a little bit later on. But in order to ask for what we need, we need to know what that is. So give some thought to what our needs are now. What are our issues? What are the things we need for us to move ahead and to tell these folks what we need? Because I think it's important for us to come together first and then present our ideas as a cohesive force to the powers that be. And we need to start that tonight. I'm happy to start that tonight. I'd love to hear from all of you. As many as you want to, get up and just tell me one or two things that you think we need to think about. So, next question.
Hi, I'm Steve Jewell again, and I want to thank you for your opening remarks, because I do also feel like this issue of HIV and AIDS isn't being addressed. But I do also want to say that being on the other side, where we're prioritizing allocating Ryan White funds, and proposed that the white paper that we did about 3 or 4 years ago, we have been thinking about this. The HIV and AIDS organizations are thinking about this. 3 or 4 years ago, when we did this white paper, we knew that come in a couple of years, the majority of HIV cases in San Francisco were going to be men 50 and above. We're at that place now, right? So our organizations, they know this is going on, but we're dealing with such dwindling funds that they have to prioritize their funds. It's up to us to demand how we want those funds spent, right? So it's important that we keep advocating for additional funds. Also,
how do we do that, Lee?
We do that by getting involved, like I'm talking about, getting involved and being a member of board of directors, getting involved in the organizations, coming to the planning council and telling us what you want us, how you want us to prioritize those funds. That's how it gets done. What's also happening here in the city is HIV and AIDS and housing. That's a big issue. So some of these things are starting to be addressed, but it's so important that we speak up. We go to these meetings and we demand that funds be allocated for these issues. That's the only way it's going to get done.
There was a study done by Lauren DeVries. Lauren, what's his name?
Right.
Yeah, and Ron DeVries, who the top issue in that survey, over 15 years old, did 600 people, I think, a lot of folks. The top issue was housing, which sort of surprised me. But when you drive down Market Street right now, and you see all the construction going on, and you start thinking, where am I going to live? How am I going to live? That's a big fucking issue for a lot of people. We're all in that boat together. And I think we're going to have to sort of start, coming up with solutions. I guess I wonder, without money, what can we do on our own to empower us to get to that place to ask for the money? You know what I mean? I think it's a step in the right direction to ask for money, but the other side of it's, coming together and figuring out what we need. Go ahead. Yes. Yes, sure.
Hi, I want to know what's being done about multi-drug resistant virus, because I'm a patient who's experiencing that. Multi-drug resistant virus.
I hear you. I have no idea. Does anybody up here know?
I have I do master swimming. I'm mastering swimming. Pretty much, I don't think about HIV when I'm swimming in practice because I figure it's too depressing in terms of my situation, my T cells and everything. And I just sort of like hope for a new drug. But, you know, like I say, I'm doing everything else I can to stay alive. You know, Bewitched on TV and, you know.
These two guys.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Eric Chisholm. Hi, Eric. Private hire, but mostly private citizen these days. I spend a lot of time hanging out with my kids. It strikes me that disruption is what does make change. We learned that in the late 80s and early 90s. We had community-based activism. We learned that in the mid-90s. Some young people asked supervisors just to talk about the need of young people in HIV, and suddenly we saw funds going there. Disruption is what's needed if we're to take power in our organization and our movement again. The Denver principles may have been the founding principles of NAPOBARD, but I went on the board shortly after you left. When I went on the board, there was a small handful of HIV-positive people on the board of directors of the National Association of People with AIDS, which was primarily made up by EDs of large ASOs from the various big cities that had large populations with HIV. So 15 years after the Denver principles, NAPA was made up primarily of people that were HIV-negative service providers. That changed, and now NAPA was sort of dearly departed, and for a number of years we had a supermajority with HIV on the board. We're not going to get on the boards of directors of ASOs by applying any more than we're going to get ASOs to start paying attention to our needs as we're aging by going in as a client and saying, geez, I have these huge existential issues and housing issues, and 5 of my friends died this year on the way to a memorial service. I'm glad to hear we're all living longer lives, but why do my friends keep dying in their 40s and in their 50s? On one side of our mouths we talk about 20 to 30 years, on the other side we acknowledge heart diseases and cancers and diabetes and a variety of other issues that are attacking many of us in this room on a daily basis in a very complex way. How many folks here are on salvage therapy for HIV meds? Most of us not. Good.
What is it?
Salvage therapy is basically when you run out of everything else, it's the last drugs that will work in the arsenal and you become resistant to pretty much everything else. Yeah. And so they work, you gotta get the combination around work because there ain't nothing else there. That's salvage therapy. I'm about five different HIV.
I think we're on the same drugs. I'm on five different drugs, and I have 140 T cells. That's up from 12, where I was for 2 years. Yeah, I mean.
But I guess my point constructively that I'm trying to make is that I don't think it's enough to say we're in this on our own because we built this system of care. Right. And we paid into the system of care. And our friends and our loved ones paid into the system of care and created it so that we had a community that was a caring community. And the reality is that since protease inhibitors, most of us have gotten a pat on the head, said, good for you, you're not dying, you should feel lucky, move the fuck on. Right? And that's either been said specifically and explicitly or it's been said implicitly. And that's still happening now, almost 20 years post-protease, or 15 years post-protease plus. Our needs aren't being addressed by ASOs because if we're stable on our meds, if we're stable in our housing, God bless, what do you want us to do for you as ASOs? Well, just by starting to have this conversation, we're hearing more ASOs either talk about the programs that they have gestating, or they're getting on the map saying, we're doing this too. We have 2 sets of needs. We have a whole set of needs related to what's going on biologically with us as we are aging prematurely because of decades of chronic inflammatory disease and serious meds, yes. Right? And we have what's going on existentially and in terms of our mental health because of cumulative loss, not just of friends, but of lovers, ex-boyfriends, spouses, people that we've cared for till the end, people that we've been friends with and watched survive, only to watch them prematurely die. We need to talk about that. Yes. And it's not about we need attention. Fuck attention. Exactly. What we need is that when people are suffering, we need to address the isolation that's been happening in our community, and that is happening with older gay men regardless of HIV status. We need our ASOs to be addressing it specifically within HIV communities, but we've often done services that are both for HIV positive and HIV negative men as a way of getting HIV positive men in the room and of getting HIV negative men to address their needs too. So we don't have to do this in a bipolar process, but we've got to be calling out that it's not simply, gee, we want some attention too, but you're in business to deal with our needs. Some of us have greater needs than others. Get on the stick. And as a community of people that have been living a long time, I'm wrapping up. And as a community of folks that have been living this a long time, we need to get back on the stick of demanding that our ASOs have a significant representation of people with HIV all along the disease spectrum, all along racial and cultural lines. Everything that we said 20 years ago is still fucking true now. It's true again. And if it's again, it's true in 5 years. So we have to continually reinvent what disruption means and what our needs look like, and re-articulate what our needs look like.
And it's a little easier now than ever with all the social media stuff. I mean, 20 years ago, we had none of that stuff.
So what we're talking about in this event here is that this is the beginning of the conversation, and then there will be tracks and groups of people that have what their interest is. One of the things that it seems that we're making very clear is that yes, we as individuals can do something, but when we join forces, we have a much greater impact, as you just said, right? So that is one of the reasons why bringing together a group of people that is an activist group of people that are actually taking some responsibility for the challenges that we're facing as a group of folks, so that we're not all on our own.
I want to make a comment about Eric's statement about getting involved. I was at the United States Conference on AIDS in New Orleans, and I've been involved in that treatment advocacy team. And that conference has become geared toward the academic field. And that's how the workshops are developed. And the registration is like $575, and I get it waived every year because I refuse to pay that. But the thing, I had a conversation with Bob Kawada, who's the executive director in MAC. And I mentioned to him that it's time you come back to the grassroots and recognize long-term survivors. And the conference is going to be in San Diego next year. And I would suggest everyone write in that Pop Water and say the plenaries should be about people living with AIDS from long-term survivors. So get involved.
Well, I think that what we should do is that you should write a letter that is for the organization, for this group of people, and then we can post it somewhere, and then people can sign on to it, and that can be right.
I can do
it. Unfortunately, there's 3 of us that are going to write a fucking letter when we go home. So it's more fun when we're all together having a coffee and getting a free bottle of water. If we could have a goddamn sandwich, it wouldn't kill anybody, would it? So go ahead.
Also, the international conference is going to be in Melbourne, Australia next year. So I think we should do the same thing to the international AIDS conference.
Yes, go back there.
So my name is Greg Rowe, and I wrote my book. It's very sweet to be here. I want to say that I really the microphone sucks.
Why don't you come over and use one of these if it's too much trouble?
Oh, here.
It might be the location of it, so let's just bring it over this way.
Okay, now I'm nervous. So I sit down because I was the only gay man with HIV for decades who didn't have peripheral neuropathy until 3 months ago, and now I bike everywhere, and it's my version of a wheelchair. So I want to say that when I stopped doing AIDS activism work, I expected that there was going to be a younger generation behind me of HIV positive people who were going to take up the slack. And those people didn't do it because protease were invented, because our service organizations were professionalized, and because nobody wanted to hear about AIDS anymore when we stopped dying so much. And I don't think that's anybody's fault. I don't want to think about dying. We humans put death outside of our awareness for a reason. And so part of what I want to say is I think we do indeed need to come together and remember the power of our stories. But I also think we need to be sharing our stories with young queer people. I know that people directly impacted are the ones who fight best for their needs, but we can also recruit allies. And I'm struck by, so I lived most of the AIDS epidemic in a different country, so I was hearing about the things that you people were doing. I was importing them into the country I was living in, and setting up workshops for people, and running support groups for doctors and nurses. And I was on TV. I was getting plane tickets from the government to go to international conferences. We were heroes of the gay community. We were heroes. And today I kind of hide my disability placard in my car when I drive into the Castro. So I also want to name that I kind of feel like a transgender person who wants to fit in. I kind of don't want to keep saying, look at me, I've got AIDS.
Why not? That's the problem.
I get it. It's a real problem.
We need a cure for discrimination, and not only that, within our own community.
I hear it loud and clear.
Hardwired since Reagan, and it's so sickening to be invisible in the gay community.
I believe my relationship to HIV is not dissimilar from my relationship to my homosexuality, and that I have to struggle with shame and internalized hatred, perhaps the rest of my life. So what I wanted to say was, and then I'll shut up. So because some beautiful creative man invented a system to give me a scholarship as a person with AIDS to get back in the workforce, 10 years later, I'm now starting a career very gently, and I'm proud of having this kind of public face. That's not I'm not an AIDS activist, and it's interesting. It's new, and I want to name that too. I'm done.
How many of you in here, if you could go back to work, would? So that to me is a need for us to figure out how we can, with our disability, feel productive again. Because we're mostly men, but even people have this general thing of, what do you do? This is the first or second thing people ask you about yourself. What do you do? I don't mind saying that I'm disabled and I'm not doing anything. But a lot of people do. And I think we have to overcome that by figuring out if we can work with our bodies the way they are right now and find things we can do. Just a thought. Yes. How many people have gone back to work?
Or working on it.
Good for you. Yeah.
How many have never left work?
How many never left? So it's kind of easily divided, you know? Yeah, cool.
There's a discrimination. There's discrimination because I'm applied
Yes.
3 different department stores. I used to be a sales person back in the 80s when I got sick. And that was something that I truly enjoyed doing, was serving the customers. I'll go back and I still have the itch and the zest for working, selling, and I'm going to 3 different department stores because of my age.
My name is Paul Margolis, and I buried 3 of my lovers. And I buried 3 of my partners, is what I want to say. And I urge you all to do what I do and get out and volunteer. I'm on the board of the Bare Chest Calendar, and I also urge you to do one more thing, and that's mingle among yourselves, get to know each other, give each other the support that you deserve.
I'm going to start over here and work our way across, okay? Go for it.
Good evening. My name is DC, and I'm HIV negative. But this really affected me because I came out in 1985, 1986, when the whole country started going, what the heck was going on. As I'm hearing about this issue, one of the things that drives me crazy are the ads for HIV medicine. Climb a mountain, everything's going to be okay. you can look this good with this HIV medicine, this subliminal messages. And and I've heard of other organizations, like I even heard today, it was an organization that stopped Starbucks from telling people not to bring guns into their stores. And I'm saying, why can't we do this as a gay community to these ads and say, we don't want these type of ads, or tell the goddamn truth. And I don't understand why, a group of gay men, when you go to the Advocate or something, you see an ad and say, this is a lie. Tell the freaking truth.
One of the things that I have thought about doing with the Let's Kick Ass is to do a real survivors, real people who are survivors campaign. To put up our pictures, put up those pictures of all of us in this room who don't look like, Jack Madden's or whatever his name is. He's really gorgeous and HIV positive, but he's a hunk, he's a god. I'm no fucking god, I'm just an average guy. And I thought, what would that look like? So I would love some input about that. And I haven't got a clue how to start. We need a photographer and all that stuff. But the idea of putting our faces out there and coming out of our, respective little shells to say, I am the real face of HIV. It's just one way to do it. Maybe it's like it gets better campaign for people with HIV.
Yeah, something like that. And then one quick thing. I think also for me, what I've had to do is really look within myself and see what's the truth and what's the lie. And I know for me, one of the things I've had to do is, why am I behaving this way? Why am I getting myself at risky behaviors? And that wasn't really encouraged when in the 80s, is to really look within oneself of why you're doing the behaviors that you're doing and getting the necessary help you feel you need so you won't be doing that type of stuff. And I think if there was an encouragement from, AIDS organizations for people to really look within themselves. Why are you doing this behavior? Why are you engaging in unsafe sex? What is really pushing you? If there was some way that AIDS organizations or prevention organizations, something to just do that and let people say, hey, I better start paying attention, because now it's like, oh, I'm HIV positive, I can pop a pill and everything's gonna be okay. And from what I'm hearing from you men, that's not true. But that's not being told. Not even the BAR, they tell this stuff. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Larry. I've been with Johnson for probably over 40 years, at least 30. I still work. I work part-time because I can't work full-time, and I am struggling. I mean, it's like I get my paycheck and it's all. Granted, I did have a house and I am trying to hold on to it as much as possible, etc. One thing we haven't talked about is the fucking healthcare system. Yes. And I remember the big ACT demonstration you did when the conference was here in San Francisco. And of course the media just concentrated on the HIV stuff, but a lot of us, most of us, part of the thing was also for universal health care. And I think we're kind of seeing now Obamacare is not as good as we had hoped, because, again, they pay homage to the drug companies, etc. So I would also like to see us not only directed at, our specific needs, but I think really we still need to address that this fucking healthcare system just enriches the insurance companies, the drug companies, and it just doesn't work.
Hi, my name is John Norton. Next month makes 32 years with Bible International. After 95 from Florida, where I helped successfully develop two-way service organizations like the Foundation. And in Florida, also known as God's Waiting Room. And there's a lot of seniors. Every year the number of seniors is doubling. And so we had that special sensitivity training on how to talk to old people about sex. Because we don't talk about it. And their numbers kept doubling every year.
Hold the microphone a little closer.
So what I see here is 70% of the people in the anti-war demonstrators have silver hair. Okay, and what I see here is a lot of silver hair. We don't die out there. We're kind of proud of it. We're kind of earned it. I see a lot of power here and a lot of unutilized resources right here in this room. But my message is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of institutions up and running exactly for this population that's just sitting here that can both help and be helped. There's a tremendous amount of resources here, and it's nice to see other people like me, because we all know that isolation is the worst thing of all. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. This is more for the people here who are within agencies. As a gay man, whether you're positive or negative, we're the ones who are often the caregivers for our aging elderly parents. And that takes up all my extra energy. And there are no support groups for us. It's, you know, the sisters and the brothers that have families and the kids sort of get, you know, oh, you'll be the one who'll help. But a lot of guys move back to their hometowns. But for people like myself, if there was a support group for coping with aging parents' health issues, that would go a long way and free up time
We want to start asking the question about what's working for people. What has worked for you? What is it working?
Just, we all know this, but just to recap. Some of the challenges have been housing, it's been health, depression, suicide, survivor's guilt, isolation, not having a place at the table, the lack of feeling that we're making a difference, that we're making a contribution. Some of us have pulled way back and we don't feel like we have anything to contribute, that we're not engaged in our world. The challenges of money, the challenges of discrimination in the community, the personal shame that we hold ourselves back. And I guess I want to say, how many people, we talked about that, but how many people feel like they maybe are taking a little bit, and this takes some honesty though, hold up your hand, they're taking a little bit of a step back because it isn't like so chic or so heroic to be this long-term survivor of HIV. I can remember walking people around in the Castro and they had lesions or something and there was this sense of heroism that was there. And now it's just this kind of like, oh, this old story that won't go away. So what we want to go to is, let me just finish. What we want to go to after this part, after Stephen and Wade get a chance to share, let's go to what has been working and start listing that. People that have been engaged in things, people that have joined organizations that they've gone to retreats and different fellowships and stuff like that that have worked, and activism stuff. So let's hear from Wade and from Stephen.
Hi, my name is Stephen. I just wanted to say I was diagnosed with PTSD a few years ago from the epidemic, and nobody talks about PTSD.
That's what I'm holding in my hand right here.
And my guess is there are a lot of people with stronger constitutions than I have who made it through without PTSD, but we went through a war.
Yes, we did.
And I was lucky enough to go through a treatment for PTSD that got me to the other side. I had to deal with my survivor guilt, but it was way more complex than I knew that it was. Now, we're looking at things to do and things we can do now. I bet there are enough psychiatrists and psychologists in this room right now who can start a group for survivors who want to address the PTSD. And if you don't think you have PTSD, go home tonight and Google it.
I have Googled it, and I've got the list in front of me. I'm going to read it to you real quick. This is the perfect time to do that because this goes over, and I know because I also had PTS. I don't call it D, I don't use the D because I think it's, you know, it's like post-traumatic stress is enough. But depression, mild or moderate, and I bet everyone in this room has dealt with depression at some time or another. Jumpiness, anxiety, survivor guilt, asking why did I live when all my friends died, flashes of anger, lack of future orientation, emotional numbness, social withdrawal and isolation, hopelessness, sexual and social dysfunction, substance abuse, sexual risk-taking. That's a partial list. Those are partially PTSD, and those are partially what I'm calling AIDS survivor syndrome. Survivor syndrome is a real thing. It was developed after the Holocaust because they started realizing that people had survived the Holocaust, but they weren't doing so well with living. And I think every one of us can relate to that on some level. Some of us did fine. Some of us were resilient. Some of us didn't have childhood injuries and wounds that made us more fragile. but a lot of us need a helping hand. And a lot of it's just about looking back and telling the person behind you, I'm here to help you. So, okay, next question. Thank you for that. I agree with you, yes.
I'm Wade. I just want to be really quick and suggest that we explore greater coalition building with groups that are already out there, especially intergenerational, economic, gender, because I really must protest the idea of we're in this alone. We're not in this alone. What oppression we may feel is a universal kind of feeling for any minority of any walk of life. And if we can move forward and learn what we learned from activism and building the ASOs, is together we're always going to be stronger than we are when we're coming at things in little bitty packs. It's what Eric was talking about is building a path of care that's both political, economical, and emotional within our community. Because this is our community. This is a community within a community within a community. And because of all the layers, you sort of have to be willing to adjust and pay attention and compromise to find the greatest level of understanding that most of us can agree on. That's why the Denver principles work. That's why ACT UP worked. That's why Stop AIDS worked. Because everyone came together and said, these are areas that we all can agree on, which is the positive list that we're accumulating over here. I've been working with the reformed ACT UP San Francisco, the non-crazy ones. And these are trans, straight, young, poor, well-educated, people of color, smart kids who are as committed as any of you ever were at the heyday of our very long war. Because that's what we're in. We're still in a war. And what I would suggest is not count anybody out as allies. And the more people we bring in shoulder to shoulder, the less room there is for them to come and get you. So, you know, I'm an activist. I am an activist. You guys made me an activist. From the first day that you told me I was positive, it was either stand up or get rolled over. And just because I'm 53 now, a person living with AIDS, still unashamed of living with AIDS, will tell anybody I live with AIDS. I think these are the places we need to get back to, of being fully comfortable with ourselves as human beings and able to stand in any room, anywhere, and say, this is who I am because I own it. You gave me that right. And that is an activist. So thanks for coming and being an activist.
Thank you.
I don't want to be offensive to anyone in the room, but as I listen, what I've become aware of is that it was easier to know what to do when the community was dying. It's just easier. Food, comfort, housing. And again, not to be offensive, it's like it's almost easier to die of AIDS and know what to do than to live with HIV for the rest of your life. And I think that's part of what we're up against. Is like, what do we do? Because the issues are so complex.
Food, comfort, housing.
Well, yes, food, comfort, housing, but clearly there's so much more too. The urgency of your neighbor, brother, lover dying motivates you in a way that's so much more clear than in the situation that we're in now. So I appreciate what we're going to try to do is to make a list of some of the things that we are currently doing that we have a sense of that works for us.
In these next 20 minutes, just try and focus on that very thing about what does work for us.
And be as brief as possible so we get as much information as possible.
Just one or two sentences, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Nickel, and I direct the Life Program at Shanti and HIV Services. And I just want to, I just want to tell a really brief story because of Ed Wolf really changing my life and my perspective on the movement, which is what is happening. When I first started working at Shanti, I went to see, we were here at Google, there was a screening, and Ed was there facilitating it. And there was a very young man, I want to say he was 21 and he was 5, who raised his hand and said, "Why are we watching this movie? What are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell us that we should be better at prevention and have safe sex?" And I think what Ed said really changed my perspective, which is what we're trying to tell you is that in the 70s, there was a movement happening. And then HIV happened and something stopped. The story stopped that we had been trying to tell. So when I sat there, I thought, well, I'm 41 years old. What story did I miss? What story have I missed that everyone in this room maybe stopped telling? So that really worked for me. And I really encourage whatever that intergenerational conversation is to say, there are people who who are part of the community, who haven't yet heard what it means to be alive.
That's right.
The theme is what's working. What is working in our lives right now?
Just stand up and say it, please. So I don't mean to microphone.
Folks, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian. I've had HIV since '99. What is working is a combination therapy. It's not just the drugs. It's the nutrition. It's the spirituality. It's the loving and caring for one another, being the stewards for the younger generation, literally. Gardening, playing music, doing what you love. Doing what you love. Getting some rest. Staying away from methamphetamines, basically. Just being true to yourself and listening to our brethren. Helping each other.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Alan Huey. I'm 48 years old. I've been living with HIV for 29 years. And what works for me, first I get up early in the morning and I get my ass out of bed and I get to the gym. And then I take my meds. I take my meds regularly. I do not party. I do not sleep around. I get lots of rest. I have a purpose-filled life. Each day I live to tell my story. I tell my story publicly. I am a former board member of the Life Foundation, HIV/AIDS services organization in Honolulu, Hawaii. I engage in online community with younger people, people our age, people older, telling our story, telling what works. I do not overstress myself. So emotional intelligence as well. Understanding when I'm stressed so that I can just say, screw it all, I'm going to the park and I'm just going to sit and have a good day. Those are some of the things I do. I also reach out to friends, family, building a support system for myself and for others. And those are the things I can think of just off the top of the head that I do in order to thrive and not just survive with HIV.
In support of those who are in recovery, what's working has been clean and sober. I've been clean and sober for 29 years. I don't stick needles in my arms anymore. And I think that's one's way to keep, that's a way to keep healthy. It's not to use drugs. It's smoking.
I want to introduce somebody, and I want to go ahead. You go.
So, because those of you who know me know that part of what I've done for the last, God knows how many decades is I'm a psychologist and I work with people who have gotten into not such great places in their lives because of alcohol and other drugs. And I think it's incredibly important in what we're going to do now that we make room for everyone, and that includes people who do drugs. Yes. And that there are ways that you can drugs that can be okay for you. There are ways that you can do drugs really that are not okay. And you know, there's so many different paths that we can all choose that make our life wonderful. And that can include drugs. Drugs can also make our lives horrible. And I think we need to be real about that and be honest about that and be honest with ourselves, and each other, which is probably the hardest thing in the world. But, and, I want to say for me, one of the things that really enabled me to deal with what I think we haven't talked about enough, which is the stigma of getting old. I'm 63. I never expected to fucking be alive, but something like I'm in my 60s, and what does that mean? And this is an incredibly ageist world we live in. And when Bart sort of talked about his age the other night, and it was this moment of like, it's so hard to be real and honest about the fact that, I'm an old man, and that's fine. That's good. What's the alternative? Dying. We stigmatize age so much. People have people say the weirdest things to me about, oh, you're not old, or you are old, or whatever. And we need to kind of overcome that and learn how to age gracefully, because, like I said, the alternative is death. So, we have to embrace our age, and we live in a culture that, all of us loved being hot young things when we were hot young things, but that does not last forever, and the whole issue of what does it mean to be an older person and have a sex life or a romantic life or intimacy or all those things is incredibly complicated and difficult. And the world out there doesn't make it any easier, because they just give us messages that we should all have, six-packs and, the perfect guns and all that stuff, and then we'll be happy. So learning how to age gracefully, I think, is incredibly important. And for me, that meant a huge part of that was going to Burning Man and starting to do psychedelic drugs again that I hadn't done in years. That reawakened me to the fact that I'm still alive, and that I can have fun, and I can dance all night long, and I can do all kinds of crazy shit that supposedly a 63-year-old shouldn't be doing. And, so I want us to embrace all the different ways that we can learn how to live our lives in a wonderful way. And then there's not one way. We're all going to find our own paths, but we do that with each other too, because a path of isolation is not going to be one of fun. So, I'm a big favor of fun these days.
Can we hear from Jennifer?
I'll keep it short and sweet.
We go for it.
I just want to echo what Ramon said earlier about being in service to others. I think that has really been what has kept me going all these years, is when I am helping others. I became a palliative care nurse, so I actually work on 5A at General Hospital, which has been a dream of mine. So I'm in the thick of it. It's not age-related anymore. But I think the change for me is I would burn out historically. When I first tested positive, I wanted to rescue all the other young people who were positive at the expense of taking care of myself, and I found balance with that. So I think being of service, whatever that looks like, if it's activism, going to board meetings and chanting, or to one other person, I think there's such great reward in that, and I believe it boosts your immune system, your esteem, and all those good things.
I just want to tag on to what Jennifer just said, which is community advisory boards. How many of you have sat on a community advisory board, whether it's at an agency or a research institution? Do they still exist?
Yes. And if they don't, it's an organization. Go to the organization and ask them to set one up.
That's exactly my point. So every organization needs to have a community advisory board, and not just fluff. It needs to actually have a voice and have a vote. Okay, so that's what we need.
My name is Charlie. I just wanted to add, for people like myself that live outside the San Francisco community, or any community where there's a lot of us, it's important to seek out other HIV people and to help each other. And that really helps the isolation. But the other thing is the education part to people who, for some reason within our community, think that if you are not working, that you're living off the system. And that they, they say, well, you don't look sick. Why don't you go out and work? I think there's a need for education within the community, so people who are not HIV positive could understand that there are multiple reasons why people can't work, and there isn't a certain look to having AIDS. I mean, that's the other thing. So that whole thing, you don't look like that. And so I think education is quite important.
So one of the things that has been that is a theme that has been completely overarching in this particular time that we're in now is depression and isolation, low self-esteem, this feeling of being completely alone. And I just want to address that this is like some real life things that people can do that make a difference in their lives. And so I want to just ask for a few guys that are involved with communities of men that has like made a difference to them when they felt like, how many people here lost a large percentage of their community of friends, their circle of friends? That's fucking devastating. It's devastating. Almost every hand went up. The rebuilding of it is a huge challenge. So I just want to give a few people a chance to say some things of what they've actually done that has made a huge difference for them. So let's go ahead and go through them really fast. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I have been story much like many of you. I've been positive since the early 80s. I retired from my career in 95, expecting to die. Then the cocktail came out, and then within a number of years after that, I found myself with no life and wondering what had happened. And the whole first decade, since 2000, I just went deeper and deeper into depression, more and more isolated, feeling more and more useless. And until it got to a point where I was considering suicide. And the thing that completely turned things around in the last year and a half is I found my way to a wonderful open-hearted community known as the Billies. That you may have heard of. And it made just a huge difference to reconnect with this wonderful community of individuals and break the isolation. And from that, I feel like I've been completely reborn, to be honest. And there's, whether it's the Billies or some other group, I was actually thinking when we first gathered in here that this could be the basis of a whole another community. It just, people need one another more than anything else. And it's in that connection with each other that almost anything can be tackled and overcome. As I'm hearing all of these different issues and problems, I mean, it's all connected by being connected to one another and leaning on one another for support and enjoying each other's company and that type of thing. So
connection is vital to people. To us living well, connections are very, very, very important. So that's awesome to hear you say that. Thank you.
There's flyers on the table, just FYI. Tez is going to be involved with this. Matt Sharp is going to be involved with this. Marc, there's a retreat that's going to be happening the first week of December, which is going to be for HIV positive, HIV negative gay men who are survivors of the epidemic. It just kind of things, so I apologize. Forgive me. But this is just what generated through this men's group that was in existence. And so I just want to say that's what the flyer looks like. Grab one. And
I want to make sure that everyone's put their name on the mailing list. If you have not done that, please come by and do that before you go, because you'll be getting an email from us very soon about what our next meeting will be and what it will be about. But we want your input. We want this to be about you. This is not about us. This is about you guys. So we have one more comment right here. I'm going to give it back to you.
Hi, my name is Gordon. I'm 20 years positive. I'll be 50 in 2 months. And talking about what works, I'm a nutritionist. People have talked a little bit about that, but nobody's talking about the fact that sugar lowers your immune system. Nobody talks about what those trans fats that actually starves the cells. There's a lot of foods that actually contribute to depression. There's all this different stuff. So I'd love to talk more about that. Your next thing, I'd love to talk more about that.
I want to add to that, Tez. So
I appreciate sort of you have an nutritional approach to addressing depression. I just want to state that, there's a significant study done by Kaiser with over 6,000 people living with HIV, where they found that more than 40% of the population were living with clinical depression. So it's a real thing. There are different ways, multiple ways that you can address it. One of the ways that I address it is I take my antidepressant every day. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I don't want to make improv seem like a sect like Scientology, but what's worked for me, 3 tenets of improv: be present, embrace failure, that means you've succeeded, and have fun.
So, I want to acknowledge that our time. I want to acknowledge that our time is up.
Yes.
And okay.
I just want to go over what some of the productive things were. We are 100% having another meeting. You know what? We're not so busy that we can't just promise that we'll come to the next one, just to see what happens, just to see if there's actually something that we could actually do together. Some of the things we talked about was an activist group. We definitely want to have a forum where we talk about that. We're a group of people that come together that actually want to do, and align with Wade and his people and create some kind of allegiance with another activist group or create our own. Bart is going to write a letter and we're going to sign on to it. Bart, is that what you're going to do? One of the things we talked about, which is we had different ideas, I think it's so incredible. We're saying a visibility campaign to bring us back. And so one could be an intergenerational. Lee was saying one could be a YouTube campaign.
I'm going to start a YouTube campaign. It's called I'm Still Here.
Okay, so a YouTube campaign. The other thing we talked about was a speakers bureau, because then you were saying get in front of young people, get in front of community organizations, create a speakers panel and a speakers bureau, and you start getting brought into places, into churches, into businesses and stuff like that. And it gives us something to do where we feel like we're making a contribution to our community. And then a group, because maybe there's a psychiatrist here who's wanting to go back to work and make a positive contribution to the community. So maybe there's a group that's created for people with PTSD, the long-term survivors of PTSD. Would you consider that, Don?
I consider that. Yeah.
Don? Everybody say thank you, Don?
Listen, I can tell you what the money is going to be about is the principles.
Yeah.
And Paul Kawada was back there when it started. So I can say, you remember those?
So the last thing is, Ed is going to do a thank you, but I want to say we're going to have another meeting. We don't have a location, we don't have the place, because this guy Tez spent his own money for every goddamn bottle of water, for the pizza we have at our planning meeting, for this room, for the 8-year sponsor of this that is going to be helpful is the community initiative. So someone needs to walk around and not let anybody go out the door without putting something into this. And it's here, so you can't roll up that dollar bill and just make it right.
Quickly before you go, the community initiative has been my partner on this. Several of the folks are here. They have just issued the new Men's Mind Study. It's an online survey. There are copies here if you want it the old-fashioned way. On the table. But it's also online at communityinitiative.com. Let's see what it's called. I never came up with this email address, but anyway, look up Community Initiative, Ben's Community Initiative, and go to that site and fill us out. Because the last time they did this, it ended up in the New York Times, and it was a very influential study. It's very important that your voice is heard. So, thank you. Listen, before you all leave and get out of here, I really want to thank you all. When I started this, I had no idea if this was possible. and I'm beyond thrilled. Thank you, thank you, thank you.